Welcome to the inner world of filmmaking. I'm your host, Tammy McGarrow. I'm an editor, podcaster, and still photographer. In this show, I will interview filmmakers in all facets of production and distribution. We're diving into the world of the trailer editor with Craig Hagedorn, who is the creative director and senior editor at Wildcard Creative Group.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I always like to start off with how did you get into editing and then specializing in trailer editing?
Yeah, so I think the first time I really fell in love with editing was probably college. And, at the time, it was a course on journalism and editing was just kind of in the background. But we did learn Adobe Premiere, which is like strangely what we're using now. It was a course in just digital video editing, and it was this kind of brand new thing at St. Michael's College in Vermont. And we just had a blast running around, renting cameras and shooting little comedy skits all over campus and just playing. At the time, it was all on tape, and you would just kind of ingest everything and just have a blast cutting together stuff. So college was where I started to do it and really love it. But my first job out of college at ESPN was where I kind of fell in love with it even further.
So how did you get into trailer editing?
Pretty gradually, I think. Nobody.
Was that what you wanted to do, or was there something?
Always. I wouldn't say always, but I would say so ESPN. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and shortly after, living in LA and trying to figure out what I think you want to cut. And there's so many things that you can cut. And the first instinct for a lot of people, I think, is long form feature editing. And those things are very enticing. And it's like when you move here and just kind of soak at the industry, that's kind of where you want to be. But the longer I was in LA and doing assistant editor work and seeing how exciting marketing editing really is versus the long form editing, which is a whole totally different format and skill set. I just said, that's the best type of editing there is. And my first gig as an AE was at a company that did a little bit of marketing behind the scenes, featurettes, making up, documentaries. So it was kind of like flirting in that world of trailers, and we would always incorporate the trailers into our work. So you get to analyze this stuff and just be around it. And I was like, I have to do that. It's just the most glamorous, expressive, dynamic form of editing I think there is. And so to get back to your question, how did I get into it? From just being a fan of it, I started just knocking on doors, like trying to get into any trailer shop that would let me in as an AE, as a runner. At the time I was cutting behind the scenes marketing featurettes. So it was kind of this dilemma. You're an editor. We're not going to you'd have to start over. So what I ended up doing was, while I was freelancing, I would just do independent film trailers. I would find filmmakers who were trying to raise money or trying to get their film distributed. I would just take gigs. I would do it for free. I did a lot of trailers just for nothing to try to get the hang of the craft. And there was one of those assignments that came along. I hired a producer who was cutting trailers, an established trailer editor named Jason O'Donovan. And Jason really taught me the basics. And then that amazing contact got me a gig eventually at Trailer Park shortly after working with him. So it was all about finding a connection with someone who has done it, who wanted to help a younger up-and-comer who just wanted to get experience. And then I got into Trailer Park, and that's where it really began.
Well, I think you did a lot of things right. You did fine-tune by getting your own experience of editing trailers. I mean, even for free, you really focused in on what you wanted to do and started to do more of that.
Yeah, it was just such a desire and thirst to do it that if you don't have the opportunity to do it at a place that will employ you, I think just finding ways to learn it and begin the learning process was huge. And it just kind of, one thing built upon the other, and eventually you get a break. and you meet someone that knows someone, and that's just anyone that's in LA knows that's how the industry can work. You have to be talented, obviously, and work hard and kind of get it, but you got to get a break. And I've gotten some good breaks.
So do you think if somebody's going into wanting to be a trailer editor, they really do need to come in with experience? Does anybody ever get hired on and get trained on the job?
It happens. It's less common, but it definitely happens. I've seen editors who are now trailer editors who not too long ago were cutting something totally different. And I think business owners and people who own trailer shops are looking to take a chance occasionally and to see if somebody who demonstrates whether they're cutting commercials or cutting trailers on YouTube. That's like an amazing format now, or a platform for young editors to try to showcase their work, is that they'll cut mashup trailers of like Marvel, all the Marvel movies in the past 5 years, and it'll be amazing. And then, people will notice that. And we have editors at our company that sort of got noticed that way, and they're amazing editors. So there's no one way or like, set way that you have to come in. You can break the mold and break the pattern. So that's always good to see. Yeah.
So do you feel like if somebody wanted to get into trailer editing and they don't have the experience, would you recommend that they work on people's short films and cut a trailer for people's short films?
Starting out with just diving in and finding that friend who shot a short movie, and I did a lot of those too. But you just kind of, at first, it's when you don't know what you're doing, or when you haven't done it professionally, I think there's this painful learning process. But I think start somewhere and just hop on a short film, an indie film that has a low budget. You can have lunch with people who are trailer editors, and I've always tried to be available to people who are just trying to learn and want to chat and understand, coming from the outside, what it is. And it is hard to teach unless you're doing it every day in a work environment with deadlines, expectations, and that there was some things you can't just teach someone who's not in the industry. But there are ways to get your feet wet and just start to get the basics and the fundamentals down.
With trailer editing, is it primarily on the Avid? On Premiere?
Yeah, it depends on which shop you're at, which company. It can vary. At the moment, most of it is Premiere. There are shops that are working on Avid, Media Composer. They're no longer shops on Final Cut. I think for a time there, up until about 4 years ago, you could be on 3 different, depending on what company you're on, you could be on Final Cut, you could be on Premiere, you could be on Avid. Yeah, it's changed and evolved. I think now Premiere offers just kind of the best of both worlds. If you started on Avid and I started on Avid, I love and miss Avid in a lot of ways. But I think young editors that are coming up and who learned in college, like they learned on Premiere most likely. It's just, to me, that's the standard right now. And if you're cutting features, that's all, and network shows, that's, you're probably on Avid, and for good reason. Like project management and sharing projects, I think Avid's great, but we are on Premiere.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Do you do everything for the trailer, like the editing, sound design, and the finishing, or do you work in a team? So you're throwing the graphics off to the graphics person, and do you have to color correct it? I was kind of curious.
Yeah. So as far as like the workflow, the editor is going to be responsible for, obviously the picture editing, the sound editing, and then choosing the sounds and gathering the sounds, how you execute, how many sound effects are you going to use, and music is a whole, I think, different or its own discussion. Like we can kind of broaden it and expand upon that, but finding the right music, working with library composers who make music for trailers and collaborating with them, you are a part of that. When it comes to graphics, you can tell them what you're looking for, what kind of look, how do you want it to animate. We really want to let them make something, and they're off designing and they're showing you mock-ups and rough versions, and then ultimately they're going to render out graphics for you, and then if you're lucky enough to get to the finishing end of it, because not everybody does. You're all competing against each other.
What do you mean by that?
So yeah, for a lot of people who are unfamiliar with trailers, I think, or the business of it, what we do is we're hired by studios, and we're not the only ones that are in the game. So when you're cutting a trailer for any film, you are in a race and you are in a competition, and it's designed that way, or it's in place in that way so that studios can get very different perspectives. They want company A because they do amazing action trailers. And they want company B because they do like the emotional kind of trailer and the great drama shops. And so they want a number of different perspectives and takes on a trailer for their movie. So in most cases, you're going to be one of a couple different people cutting. If you're lucky enough to win and get the trailer, then when it comes time for the finishing side, they have a finishing department, and each company has assistant editors that are handling the preps. And you asked about color correction. I think depending on what stage the film is in when you're working on it, they should have already been doing some color correction. If you're working on a film and it's very early form, if you're working on dailies and it hasn't gone through color correction, we will definitely do that. I mean, at a rudimentary level, I'm not like a colorist by any means, but you want your trailer to look good, and you want, what they shot to be beautiful as it can be. So we'll spend time doing that, but, you don't want to burn days doing it either.
So do you create the brief for the project, or are you given instructions to how they want it to be cut?
Yeah, in most cases, you're given a brief from the studio. I would say almost every time you have a call or some kind of, group discussion with whoever you're working for, and they're going to have an idea of what the brief can be. It can be so many things, but they are going to give you a vision for what the movie needs to accomplish as far as who's the audience, what kind of piece are they looking for. Sometimes they'll have sort of a marketing angle or position on a movie, and they want to say, we want to avoid this, so we really want to focus on these two stars because they are like the heart of the movie. And they might give you some comparables and say, we want this to be like XYZ trailer you guys did last year. And so you'll get a brief, and what that is depends entirely on the movie and who you're working with, but you will get a direction. And then it's time to, keep that in mind, but you have to be able to navigate and detour a little bit as you go. It's never like, oh yeah, you want that direction. Okay, no problem. There's always problems to solve along the way.
Right. And how do you keep up to date on all the different styles of cutting and bringing in graphics and timing and music? I mean, do you watch a lot of trailers, or what do you do? Yeah,
I think you have to. It's really important, I think, and I fall behind on this. I think a lot of people do because there's so much out there. I think it's really important to consume not only trailers, but marketing, like commercials. I was watching something the other day. It was like an open for a show that we've been binging, and the opens on a lot of shows that you watch can be so brilliantly done. Just the way they bring in a text, so it's keyable, and then it's over picture. Like, there's all kinds of tricks that you can just bank and steal, and that's kind of part of, I think, being in a creative world, is that you're all sharing with each other in some way and bouncing or inspiring each other, I should say, to find those new, trends and different ways of presenting something and packaging something, whether it's graphics or there's a car commercial out now that's so badass. And I can't even tell you what it's for, but the sound design was incredible, and it felt like a trailer the way it was done. There are things around you all the time. I think you just have to be consuming and hungry to always be bringing it in. And then sometimes you're not aware that you're using it while you're on a trailer. It just kind of it's there for you because you've watched it.
And now, do you work with the other editors in the company? Like, do you guys watch each other's trailers to kind of get some notes or have other people watch yours?
Yeah, it's very collaborative. I mean, I think most companies are this way, is that you're part of a team and you know each other very well. And cutting trailers is really difficult a lot of the time. And I think when you're in the process and going through the discovery process, you want to bounce ideas off your colleagues and share and like, hey, what do you think of this open? Is it grabbing you? And getting honest feedback and supporting your colleagues is a huge reason that we're successful, I think. So yeah, we do that a lot.
Now, do you work from home or do you work in the studio or in the office?
I work mostly from home, but depending on what you're on, there's certain projects that require you to be in office. If you prefer to be in office, you can do that too. It's just, it's mostly up to your preference now. And I like being in the office for a lot of reasons. You get to connect with the editors and just sort of talk about things when you're in the hallway and just bounce ideas off each other. It's good.
Yeah. Is this the new way of doing things, is working from home since 2020, or has this always been an option?
No, I mean, it's relatively, I think I knew a handful of people, honestly, pre-pandemic that were working from home, and it was across the whole industry, maybe a handful. So yeah, the pandemic changed not only like trailer editing, but anybody who's cutting. We have friends that cut network TV shows, that cut films from home, and it's totally transformed the technology and how you work, which I think is a great thing. It's, a lot of people are happier cutting from home, and it's secure. The way that we're doing it is amazing.
Yeah. No, it is great. And then probably you work more when you work from home because you can take little breaks and then kind of do your thing into the night where you're not having to go
walk your dog, go have dinner. And then if you want to keep jamming at night and you're really, enthused about something and you want to wake up at 4 a.m. because you have an idea and throw it down, like, go for it. Like,
Yeah.
That is the benefit.
So I've always been curious about the trailer editing, and you had said about dailies. Like, do you get the whole movie, and then I'm sure you get it without the music and the sound effects because that would just make the editing, hard.
Yeah. So depending on what stage of the movie's in when you're working on it, when you begin working on it, I would say most of the time, somewhere around 70% of the time, you're getting a cut of the movie, and it's not finished. It's not complete. It could be work in progress. The visual effects aren't done typically, and it can be in a lot of different stages of development. So they'll send us, cut of the film, and it'll be split. So you'll have dialogue, sound effects, music split out because it's hard for us to do, impossible for us to do our job.
Right.
Not impossible, but hard if you don't have dialogue and music split out. So yeah, they'll send it with all that split, and you will get updated features as you cut, as you progress. If you're on a campaign for a long time, you could get 5 versions of the movie throughout the course of your time cutting. So it totally depends. You can come in and they've shot for a week and they only have dailies, and you're making a teaser that's going to be 1 grid of dialogue and 15 shots. Like, it totally depends on what their needs are, when they want a piece finished, and what stage the movie is being, completed or shot.
Well, that probably makes a lot of sense to some trailers when you see them and you're like, that was never in the movie, because you're getting dailies. So they may or may not use that.
Yeah, exactly. Or, the film can shorten over a period of time. Filmmakers may choose to delete scenes, and if at the time that particular scene helps you create a moment that tests really well or just everyone loves, then yeah, they're gonna work with you and see the value in having that in there. And that is a big reason why people go like, hey, I didn't see that. And it happens often, I feel like, in comedies.
Yeah.
I used to think that way, and you'd feel like almost cheated when you go see a film and you're like, oh, all that great joke in the trailer is not even in the movie. But
right.
That is a part of working with something that's morphing as you're cutting.
Yeah, and do you find that sometimes the challenge, I know that this is probably a frequently asked question to the trailer editor, is why did we see the ending of the film? Is that the challenge, is sometimes the best parts are the parts that need to be in the film, to make the trailer?
Yeah, there's a big give and take, I think, or balancing act, especially now, that trailers need to give enough story to consumers and audiences that give them a reason to, I think, understand the conflict and what is happening. But too much can be, the comment I hear a lot when people see trailers now is like, okay, I saw the whole movie, like, what do I need to go? I think, but, there are plenty of great teasers and trailers that the power of, I think, marketing really well and a great piece is what you don't show or don't tell them. And, there is a balance to strike, and you have to, I think our job is to find that perfect mix of you understand the characters, you understand the story and the dilemma, and you have a inkling as to how things are going to go, but there's a lot left unresolved. So yeah, depending on, I think, a lot of factors, you'll either work to make that minimal, or you might be with someone who wants to tell more story and have a trailer test really well. It just depends.
Yeah. Could you walk us through how you begin a project?
Yeah. So, the whole thing will kick off with, recapping what the clients have sort of said as their brief. Like we just spoke about earlier, you're going to get some kind of directive and direction from a studio client. And after that, if you haven't watched the film, hopefully you've watched the movie before, the kickoff and the brief. But if you haven't, we'll spend a day or two watching the film, whether you're producing and helping the editor, or whether you're the editor, you got to dive in. And I think it's important during that phase and it's hard to just sit back and keep your hands from hitting the keyboard,
right,
and just watch and just be a movie fan for those 2.5 hours or whatever it is, and just live in it and watch it. Then I think everybody has their own method and how they do this as editors, but you do have to break down. We really want to know every shot, every piece of dialogue, every head turn, every moment, every look, the littlest things that you may not notice or consider when you're first watching. You have to consider and just, basically bookmark, and any method you want to do it. You can create a string out of all the scope, a string out of all the action. There's no wrong way to do it, but you have to somehow bake into your head, your brain, that you have a recall of what to grab and some way to organize it, index it.
How do you do it?
So
what do you do?
How do I do it?
Yeah.
It's changed over the years. I think there's a really strict way to do it. And this is how I learned. It's not necessarily how I do it now, because I think depends on the film and the genre. If it's an action film, you've got to be very disciplined. If it's a drama, it changes the way you're pulling selects a little bit. But the way I learned is you first do a dialogue breakdown, and you'll subclip every piece of dialogue, and you'll label who's saying it and what they are saying. And you're basically going to subclip that. It has all the information of what the character is and what they've said. And you create just a bin of dialogue selects. And that way, intercutting, and you're like, oh, what's that line about? I don't know, the truck and the fire. You just search truck and you just do a word search, and boom, the line's right there. Instead of scanning through every single reel, I'm like, oh, this is over here. Was the end of this reel? I don't know. The whole purpose, and I think whatever you're cutting, this is true for all editors, is speed. And you don't want to waste any time. You want to work as close to like speed of thought as you can. So however you want to do it, that's the key part of why you do it. So you'll do a dialogue breakdown, and then picture. So picture can be done in string outs, like I mentioned, where you'll string out shots that are scope, shots that are action oriented, shots that are emotional shots that are, it could be a lot of different things. ID shots, we refer to them just like, oh, I need a good ID shot of Tom Cruise. And okay, well, I have a string out right here of like 14 of them, and, let's scan through them. So, like I said, there's no wrong way to do it. And every editor, I think, has their own preference. And, oftentimes we talk about it and share like our little differences and tips. But you want to be able to, when you're doing changes on the trailer, have everything at your fingertips. And not only from when you're cutting the initial version, but when you're revising. So it's important to be organized.
When you were talking about the dialogue and, being able to search, where are you doing that? Are you doing that in Premiere? Or are you doing
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can just, in Premiere, or, I learned in Avid too. There's always a method or a shortcut to make a subclip. So you just set an in and out on your source, and characters talking, your source monitor, and like, oh, it's a great line. You're going to set your in right on the first frame of the line, and you set your out. So really clean in and out of the line. And then you'll make a subclip, and then you'll create, once you see that subclip pop up in a bin, just go to that and modify the name of the subclip. So when you're changing the name, you just do dialogue, however you want to label it.
Right.
Who's speaking, what they're saying. Yeah. So as far as the process, you're going to break down on day 2. Let's say you watch the movie day 1 and start breaking down. Maybe a couple of days have gone by. And then you're going to meet again, I think, with your internal creatives. You'll have a producer and a creative director, and the plan. The direction from the client. Then I think it's up to everybody in that room to form a plan. Like, what is the open going to be? Let's talk about, maybe it's just a cold open on this scene, and you get these 2 characters that are, pivotal to the film, and they're both in it. You basically try to come up with a way to start, and it doesn't have to be completely defined, but you want a roadmap, and you want everyone to be sort of in agreement, like, and getting excited together, like, yes, that's it, as far as the structure. And then totally different conversations about music. You have to really, in my opinion, that choice and that discovery, the music of the trailer and the tone, is 80% of your success. If it's going to be a great trailer, if it's going to finish, if you're going to set yourself apart from other people who are cutting, your music has to be phenomenal. And if it's not, you're not dead in the water if it's not, but you're going to be drowning for a while.
Right.
You're going to be in a life preserver. Just it's hard. So you have to do whatever you can we have a music team, music supervisors, and a department devoted to pulling music and finding the right tone, whether it's a song or sound design, a library cue or custom cue, where you're taking a song and trailerizing it, deconstructing it. There's a lot of ways you can go. But that all depends on what you think your client is looking for too.
Right. And budget too, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. You don't want to use Led Zeppelin on a movie that's got a budget of $1 million, because that's their whole budget.
Right.
So you want to be conscientious of that. Know there are guardrails of reality that they're going to be able to afford, and work with what rules you have in place, and then really the music can take a couple of days to get right. You might customize it. You might have a library take a song and augment it. And so it's kind of this juggling act of, okay, while the music is going, let me start my open. And once you get the music, when they cut it in, okay, how does the music feel? Okay, maybe it's working, but it needs more of this, less of that. Let's work with the composer. So you're progressing as things are being finessed for you. And, hopefully by the end of the process, which usually takes, I would say, from start to finish, from the first day you watch the movie to when you send a version 1, I think the perfect amount of time is 2 weeks. You don't always get that. You might get longer if you're lucky. Yeah. And if the client is like, I need this, for meeting and such and such date, you might get less time. It really all depends, but that seems like a great amount of time to get something that's really finely executed with enough time that you can all come together, watch it, add some, go through the process of collaboration, which is, we're talking about the trailer editor today, but it is an enormous collaboration. It's, the magic of the process is not, I think, what you do by yourself. I think it starts when you begin to show your piece to other people who are really creative. And then it becomes like this amazing mix at ballet of great ideas coming together, and your piece gets better. And I think that's the best part of the process is the collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great that you have a music department and your graphics department, because sometimes they want you to do everything. And it's always good to be able to refer to other people that's their specialty. Now with music, I know that sometimes there's music in the film, but because of, the budget, you can't use it in the trailer. Do you find that you had instances where you're using the same piece of music in the trailer that's in the film, or that you often have to go find new music?
Sure. I mean, there may be temp music in the feature when you get it. There could be final score from a composer. There could be popular music that's you don't know if it's going to be in there when the film is completed. So you'll have like a reference for tone in the film. And I would say it's pretty rare. I couldn't even count the times there was music in the film, a song or score. I would say mostly a song where we ended up using that. It happens probably a handful of times, for me at least. Most of the time, I think we're trying to find something that's true to the film's tone and honors it. But I think the danger with picking something, oh yeah, they used this great song in the opening of them, it's a little obvious and everybody might use it. Now, you may end up using it because you have to use it at some point, but I think your first impression, you want to be a little more unexpected. But yeah, I think you have to pay real close attention to what's used in the film. If you're working on a movie where Hans Zimmer is the composer, you better consider that, and you better customize things that are true to him and his work. Same is true for Spielberg and John Williams. If you're working on West Side Story, like the trailer I did, the music has to be at such a high level of honoring the score and the famous songs and the feeling of it. So yeah, you want to consider all those things when you're listening to the song and score of the film.
So who are the people that you work with? Are you working with the studio, marketing team? You're not working with maybe the director of the film, or are you, or producer of the film?
So initially, you're working with the marketing team at the studio. Now, occasionally, I would say it's rare that you'll work directly with the filmmaker. It does happen, but I would say 90% of the time you are initiating the process with a studio client, and depending on who that is, knowing his or her taste. It's a small industry, and you begin to understand clients and taste and expectations. And so that's how it begins. You're working for the studio, and then ultimately they'll have to show the filmmaker what you've created, and who that filmmaker is depends on how involved they're going to be and how much of an opinion they'll have. So they are part of the process for sure. And rightfully so. It's they directed the movie and put their, heart and soul into it. So you have to make that part of the collaboration, and accommodate them.
I'm sure that some are in the studio with you, possibly.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't had an experience like that. I have had to meet filmmakers in order to work on their movie, and that's exciting. It doesn't happen too often, and sometimes I have plenty of colleagues where the director will sit in their couch and go through the trailer, and anything can happen. I think that's the exciting part of our industry, and great filmmakers want to be involved in the marketing. And I think great filmmakers really understand marketing in a way that's additive, and Spielberg definitely does, and will make a trailer better. And people like Christopher Nolan and David O. Russell, they're a big part of that process.
I bet that'd be exciting to work with them.
Yeah.
Pick their brain.
Yeah.
So what's the most challenging part of cutting trailers for you?
I think the most challenging part is knowing that you're going to go through a process, and your version one is it's like your Mona Lisa, and you put all this effort and all this heart and soul into this creation. And I think the hardest part, and now I don't consider it the hardest part, but I think for a lot of people, this is the hardest part, is that Mona Lisa that you made is going to be scrutinized. It's going to be changed. You're going to have to repaint it. You're going to have to start over. You're going to have to, and then go back to the original. It's the process from version one to when it's out in the world. You're going to be tested, and sometimes it's not that difficult, and sometimes it's surprisingly, arduous, and but I think that part of the process for me now is, I think there's value in that. You have to, the trailer is not just for one person. The trailer is, so many people need to approve this, and so many people need to be moved by it. So, the real art, I think, of being a great trailer editor is knowing that you're going to have to change, and you're going to have to be really on your toes every day to come up with solutions. And it sounds like it's not a creative thing, but it's a highly creative thing. Like, you have to solve problems every day and make a piece work with all these changes and all these demands and requirements, sometimes limitations. And I think the really great ones that I've seen and learned from know how to go through that process, keep their head, keep their cool, and be able to spin really good creative, create something really great when, there's a lot of needs to be met, and a lot of, I think that's where a lot of creative can stumble. And if you can really thread that needle and just understand that this is going to change, it's going to be a process, but I have to make it great. Every day I have to make it great. And I don't care what forces are at play, and if I can't get this piece of music because it costs too much, and now we have to use this, there's always a way. And I think that can be the hardest part of the job, and it can be the greatest part of the job. The other, I think, hard part about the job is you could work on something for months and it'll never see the light of day. And that can be really tough for some trailer editors.
Oh, I bet. All that work.
Yeah. If you get that close and it doesn't go, then you have to pick yourself up and be like, you know what, I learned a ton on this job, and even though it didn't reach, the victory finish line, I'm a better editor because of what I just went through. And, finding those little moral victories is going to help you have a long career.
Yeah. So what's the most exciting thing about cutting trailers?
There's a lot, I think. We kind of touched on one earlier, is the unpredictability of meeting your heroes and interacting with filmmakers. And, Spielberg, since I was, 10 years old, that is just a huge heroic figure for me. And getting to not only finish trailer or work on a film of his, even before anything was finalized, it was such a thrill. And to be beyond something as beautiful as West Side Story, and like inspiring, and just every day you're coming into work and you just feel good because it's done by a master. You don't get those every year, and those are really specialty, I think, privileged projects. But the exciting thing is meeting those heroes. And if you're lucky enough, you get to do that. And I had to meet David O. Russell and I love his films, and that's a very exciting perk of our job. And the other thing that never gets old is if you've worked on a trailer for months, it could be a year, more than a year, and every editor knows this feeling. It's like you're in this little cubicle for so long, just making this thing, and you've heard it in this little space, and then you go to a movie theater and you see all these strangers around you, and it's your trailer, and all these people you don't even know are watching it, laughing, or they're not even paying attention. They're on their phones, and they're just like getting into the movie late, dropping popcorn and hitting your feet, whatever, which drives me crazy. But, the best part is knowing that your trailer and something that you collaborated with to create is reaching millions of people. There's these YouTube reaction trailer videos. Have you seen these where people just react to trailers?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a huge thing, and it boggles my mind that how quickly they're able to create these, first of all, but that they could be people from, Ireland or Australia or Japan, and, something that you made and helped put into the world is reaching all those people is a crazy feeling, and it's a great one.
I bet. And also that you get to see the film probably before other people get to see it, because the trailer probably needs to be cut before it goes out, but that you get to see what they did before anybody else gets to see. And then you get to grab the best parts of it to make this, thing to get people to see it. So,
yeah, I mean, that can be a blessing and a bit of a, every trailer editor knows that this feeling of like, if your partner, wife, husband wants to go out to see a movie and you're like, I've seen it, I've seen it, like we've worked on it. So there's a lot of pleasure in going to the movies and just sitting down and not having seen the film. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely days where you're like, your job is to sit there and watch a movie. And, that's always a privilege, especially if it's a really good one. And, I still have days where I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like my job is to sit back and just be a movie fan today. The work, it's going to start very soon, and you're going to have pressure on you, and all that becomes task oriented, just like any job at some point. But you're getting lost in the world, and you're doing that multiple times, a month probably. And that's a really, really fun job to have.
And you work on one trailer at a time, or do you have to do multiple projects during the week where you're having to switch off to different projects?
Well, yeah, most of us have multiple things happening at the same time. And ideally, if you're busy, you might have 3 or 4 campaigns that you could be on. But when you're when you're in the initial creation phase of that version 1 cutting, it's really important to have as few distractions as possible. There's not much you can do if another project comes up and you're the guy or woman on it, and you have to make a change on it. You're gonna have to do that. But I would say while you're in the version 1 phase, we try to insulate each other and give that editor their time, distraction free to cut. And then there's 2 phases, I think, or 2 modes that you're going to be in as a trailer editor. It's the creation phase and the revision phase. And you have to be good at both. And when you're revising, you can be revising 2 or 3 at the same time. And you can be working on TV spots, which are 30-second little trailers that run on TV and digital and, wherever else. And so you are multitasking proportions of the year, but you just have to balance that out.
Yeah, be a good time manager.
Yeah. And every company you're at, it's their job to help you in that way, and make sure you're not overloaded. And that's where the teamwork comes in. You might have to take someone else's and give them some relief, and vice versa. And that's just part of being in a team atmosphere.
So any last words you'd like to share with the listeners? Any last thoughts?
Man, I mean, I would say yeah, trailers are such a treat to create. That go see a movie in the theaters, please. Just go experience. Like, there is nothing like sitting in a theater, and for me, seeing trailers run in an audience is such a treat, and just makes me feel great. And I really hope that people continue to consume trailers, but also go and see them in theaters. I think we're so distracted when we're watching online, and these things are meant and created to be and heard in a theater. So I think I want people to continue watching trailers, but see them in the venue they're meant to be seen, and all that work we put in, you won't be disappointed. So I love the craft, and it's a blast talking about it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I feel like you gave us a wealth of information on trailer editors.
Yeah, it was a privilege to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram @Tammy Magaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?